We're going to be taking up a number of bills that should help study long-term care needs for our aging population. Before we get started, I would just like to ask my co-chair if she has any comments.
Thank you, Senator. Just welcome everyone. Look forward to hearing from all of you.
Thank you. And our ranking members, do you have any comments?
Good morning, Madam Chair. Thank you for allowing me to speak. Welcome everybody to our first public hearing. Got a couple of interesting concepts here in front of us, 7 bills altogether, and looking forward to hearing the testimony from those that have submitted or those who do show up wanting to speak.
Thank you so much. So just a reminder that those testifying will have 3 minutes, and then Ginger will gently give us the cut and ask you to summarize your thoughts, and we will get started. So our first person is Representative Cheeseman, and then we will have Mag Morelli.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairs Hogadell and Garibay, and Ranking Members Belinsky and Seminara, and distinguished members of the Aging Committee. I appreciate having this opportunity to testify before you today in favor of Raised Senate Bill 902, which would create family councils for assisted living centers. And you have my very brief written testimony, and I'd just like to explain why I feel this is such an important bill. I'm blessed to have a 96, soon to be 97-year-old father still in my life. He currently resides in an assisted living facility in Niantic, 2 doors down from my museum, which makes it very handy. And I know what a benefit he has found from having this safe, welcoming place in which to live. I've been very pleased with the care he's received there. But as we've seen, there can be issues. And I do believe, particularly given the somewhat neither fish nor fowl nature of assisted living facilities, it's very important to give the families the opportunity to have a voice. There are sometimes issues that I know residents may not feel comfortable raising at those residence councils that families share, and to have that opportunity to weigh in officially. I want to thank Mairead Painter, our ombudsman, who does such a fabulous job and has been an incredible resource. And this committee and the General Assembly did so much to address some of the shortfalls we found during the pandemic with our nursing homes. Making sure residents could have loved ones present and really addressing those issues. And I think as we move forward, it's really vital that we bring that same lens to those living in assisted living facilities. They're paying a lot of money. It's important that they not only receive financially what they are paying for, but also emotionally, spiritually, and that their needs aren't overlooked, and that they and their families have a true voice and can have the opportunity to express that. If you're living there, you as a family, you as a resident don't want to move. You don't want to find that your care, because of something that could be corrected, you then face hard choices. So I strongly urge you to move this forward. I think it will fill a very necessary need. And I know families like mine would be extraordinarily grateful if this could be voted out of committee and receive a vote on the floor. So I want to thank you so much for hearing my testimony today. And if you have any questions, I'd be delighted to answer them.
Thank you so much for that. Are there any questions or comments? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Cheeseman, thank you so much for coming to testify on this. Could you just sort of provide me with a vision of how this would work versus, how the resident councils are working, and to whom would these councils, to whom would they be accountable, responsible for.
Well, I think that the vision would be, I know where my dad lives, that the residence council has a chair and, you know, there are people who sort of run it, but then it is open to all the members to discuss things, everything ranging from food to, you know, issues they're facing. And I think that might be run in a similar fashion, that whether, you know, families would it would become known that this was a possibility, and the residents would communicate with the families. We're forming a families council. You know, we're going to have an initial organizational meeting on this date. Please come if you're interested. I'm not quite sure if it would have a formal structure, you know, all those things that were in the residents council. And then I would hope there would be regular meetings, you know, once a month on, you know, the second Sunday or whatever at 2 p.m. where families could come in and meet with management and representatives of management and discuss any concerns they might have. And then there would be certainly an expectation. I don't know if we can make a requirement that within a certain period of time, the management would then come back and explain, you know, how they plan to address these concerns, whether they felt these concerns were warranted, and just to create the dialogue. You know, it's about communication. It's about having more avenues. So something that they might not perceive as a problem, or we might see as an issue, if you can sit down and have that conversation. And sometimes, you know, there's strength in numbers, and you might think, well, I'm the only one who's seeing this. Well, if there are a group of you, then you say, oh yeah, you know, it's not just my dad, it's not just my mom. This is something. And I think an organization that's well run is going to welcome that input, because it's in their interest to keep their residents happy.
Thank you very much for that. I would also view it as a way of having accountability within the system, as opposed to having complaints or observations of shortcomings in care be lost on a social worker in a one-on-one basis. So I think this is fabulous. I wish it existed when I had my mother and my father in assisted livings, and didn't have as good an experience as I would have expected, or that they deserved. So thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you. Thank you for your question.
We have a question or comment from Representative Bohr.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you, Representative Cheeseman, for your advocacy on this important concept. My question to you is: do you envision maybe the minutes or the reports from the family meetings to be public and to be available to other families who may be considering this facility?
I think that's a great idea. Again, I think more information is always better. This is a big move for families. When someone enters an assisted living facility, obviously you want it to be the right choice. You don't want to 6 months down the road say, I wish I'd known that, because I would have made a different decision. So I think that's excellent. And I think as you draft this legislation, that's something you know you will have the input on, and you will recognize the importance of making this a bill that's not just a feel-good bill, but is actually going to result in the outcomes that we would like to see.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Representative Bohr.
Yeah, thanks. I'm so glad to hear you're open to that. And I know that it's important to allow this kind of coalition to exist. But if the leaders of the facility don't really do anything with that information, it may not be as impactful. But if they know that folks will be looking at what the results are, I think they will be a little bit more inclined to address the issue. So thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Senator Marks.
Thank you, Chair Hockadell. Through you to Representative Cheeseman. Thank you for this, Representative Cheeseman, for your advocacy. My only question would be, as somebody who, I'm a visiting nurse, I see a lot of clients in their homes and in assisted livings, that just because somebody is in an assisted living, it does not mean that they have given up their autonomy over what they want. And I just have seen many times where the family might want something, or it might be something very important for the client, for the loved one, but yet that's not what the loved one wants to be important for them. So how would you consider, would the patients, would the residents of the assisted living have to give permission for their family to be their voice? And what if they don't want that family to be their voice?
I think that's a very good point. I don't think this would be, I would assume any assisted living facility worth its salt would not take the word of the family over the resident, particularly if the resident were in the normal, traditional living wing. At the end of the day, that resident has the final say on how he or she is treated. This would be an addition. I mean, my dad, thank God, I bring him the Sunday Times in every Sunday. He is still extraordinarily engaged. They have a library at at his facility. Every time I go in, 2 or 3 more books have come from R.J. Julian Madison. He is just working. So no, it is not to advocate for things that the patient doesn't want. But I do think very often a patient may be reticent to say something, whereas the family may feel more empowered. I am so conscious, and this is one of the things I love about my dad's facility. Everyone there is respectful. They treat him as an intelligent, competent, strong human being who may need assistance with the, actions of daily living. But this would not in any way be meant to take away the true voice of the person in the assisted living facility. It would be to give families a way to have a voice as well.
Thank you for that. Any other questions? Representative Garibay.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony and for sharing your experience. One of my concerns would be, does the group run the meeting themselves, or is there staff there running it for how would that work? Because many are afraid to speak. And that would be the only thing with it being public. And
So the families are afraid to speak, or the staff are afraid to speak?
the residents are afraid to speak. And some families, because they're afraid if I speak, they're gonna, come back and be worse with my parent.
And I think, again, and I'm only talking about my experience with the facility where my father is, and I have never seen anything that would make me concerned about treatment or behavior.
Mhm.
But it's, sometimes it's things. So there was recently a COVID outbreak and they closed the dining room. Well, I know for my dad, that was so hard. Sometimes there were meals that weren't, that were delivered cold and things like, so just to be able to get perhaps more conversation and input about what's behind a particular decision. And, even, well, this is what this is what we're told has to happen. Well, can you explain to me the rationale behind this? So that's just one
Mhm.
example. And as I say, we are never going to be able to make it perfect.
Right.
We're never going to be able to, if someone's in a facility where they feel, oh, well, if I say something, then people aren't going to treat me well.
Mhm.
Well, unless we can make human nature perfect, that's not going to happen. But what can we put in place that will maximize, as I say, not only the opportunity for communication, for voicing things that may be, I think this is a screw up and I realize it's been a misunderstanding. Again, it's creating a channel for open communication that I would hope both sides would view as positive and productive. And at the end of the day, the goal would be to make the experience of the person in the assisted living facility as good as possible.
All right. So let me just clarify. I am not saying I believe that happens. What I'm saying is people that reach out to me, their fear is real. They
Mhm.
have
Oh,
that
yeah.
fear, whether, I don't have reports of it actually. So it's how do we, that has to be part of it, that they don't feel
And I think
fearful.
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I think that's part of the messaging. And I think that's one of the things we need to communicate, should this bill pass, to those assisted living service or, providers, that this is not meant to target you. This should be a help to you. Again, because if you are, because a lot of this is word of mouth. I have an elderly parent. I know your dad's in assisted living. Can you tell me about the facility? Well, if I'm running the facility, I'd much rather find out that there's a problem and fix it, or a misperception, than have me going around and saying, oh, I wouldn't put, if I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't put my dad there. So again, I think this could, I hope, would be viewed as a positive, because it helps spread the message. Yeah, there may have been a few hiccups, but they've always been incredibly responsive. And by the way, they have this great family count, not only resident council, but family council, where if there are issues, we talk about them and they fix them. So it's about the packaging. And again, the messaging. And I think this is, we're open. We want to hear if you're unhappy, and we'll do our darndest to fix it. And as I say, if we
A little bit like a condo association, that they get together and they work through it. So,
and I think it's obviously up to this committee, as you draft the bill, looking at things, in terms of how prescriptive you want to be and how this plays out.
yes, thank you.
Thank you. Are there other comments or questions? Go ahead. Senator?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Rep. Cheeseman, I just wanted to float the idea by you of the thought of perhaps, at least initially, how would you feel about an ombudsman running this meeting to get it started, maybe helping families to facilitate and their comfort level to talk to one another, and then maybe again the ombudsman being able to, and the group being able to maybe choose a leader or choose somebody that might be, when the ombudsman doesn't need to be there with regularity, but helping the process.
I think that's a great idea. I think anything that will help this get off to a smooth start and ensure its continued existence, because again, we've seen, councils that start and there are tons of people to begin with, and then at the end of the day, it's the same two people showing up. So I think anything that you could do to maximize the success of this, to make a smooth rollout, and to make families and the families and the facility feel confident that this is going to be, an open and fair process, I would certainly would welcome.
Thank you. Representative Vale.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I share the same. I thought this was a great idea, but then Senator Marks brought up that question about people have different level of needs, different level of care, and I do think it's important that the residents themselves, they might not have a good relationship with their family, and there could be stuff with that and different family members. We've seen issues in different facilities over the years where there is some abuse and there is some of that. So where I think most people have good intentions, we do have to kind of be careful of doing that. Would you be opposed to, some type of language where the family could get involved, but they might need some type of permission from their who's ever staying at the facility to participate in something like this?
I think that would be up to the committee.
Okay.
I do think, I take your point and Senator Marx's point that they're not always good relationships. On the other hand, I do think in most cases, the families and loved ones do want the best for the parent or brother or sister, whoever is in there. And again, there may be cases where, the resident doesn't feel comfortable and would be more inclined to have the family raise the issue. So I think, this is a complex topic. We're talking about people who, as I say, like my dad, are, have all their mental faculties and acuity, but do need physical assistance. And we do tread a fine line in not taking away autonomy and allowing our loved ones to feel in control as long as possible and not take that away from them. If it were simple, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But I do take that into account. And I think as this committee moves forward, that's something you should consider in whatever legislation may come out.
Thank you. Are there other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you so much for your testimony. I'm so glad you're having a great experience with your dad.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Next, we have Mag Morelli, and that will be followed by Deb Poulin.
Thank you, Senator Hackadell and Representative Garibay and members of the committee. My name is Mag Morelli, and I am the president of Leading Age Connecticut, a membership association representing the not-for-profit provider organization serving older adults across the continuum. I'm here, we've actually submitted testimony on several bills, and I just want to give some brief testimony on a few of them. First, on Senate Bill 901, that's the act concerning a registry of persons convicted of financial crimes against elderly persons. Our read of the bill is that it would charge the state with developing a registry of persons convicted of financial crimes against the elderly. And that registry would be incorporated into the centralized background check system that all long-term care providers must currently utilize when hiring staff. And we have no objection to this concept and see value in adding these type of offenses to the centralized system that we currently use. Senate Bill 902, the establishment of the family councils in the assisted living communities. We have no objection to the creation of family councils with the managed residential communities, which are the settings for our assisted living model. We also appreciate the recognition that the bill does see that many residents living in managed residential communities are independent adults and therefore should be given the opportunity to consent to their family members participating in the family councils. We do, however, have a concern with the wording of the proposal, which would mandate that the managed residential community authorize the establishment of family councils. As written, the statute would say that the MRC is required to authorize and assist in the establishment of a family council. We're not comfortable with the word authorize as it is not defined and could be interpreted to mean establish, approve, or oversee the council. While providers may be required to assist upon request and even encourage the establishment of such a council, it should not be required that they authorize or oversee its function. We would therefore respectfully request that the language be modified to read, encourage and assist in the establishment of a family council. We believe that this is more in line with the spirit of the proposal and would also be in line with the current state regulations for nursing home family councils. And finally, on House Bill 5779, the study on criminal penalties for abuse, abandonment, and financial exploitation. We really appreciate that the proposal includes a representation from Leading Age Connecticut if the task force is established, and we would be more than happy to help in that study. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. Are there questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you again for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next, we have Deb Poulin, followed by Peaches Quinn.
Thank you, and good morning to the distinguished members of the Aging Committee. For the record, my name is Deb Poulin, and I am the Executive Director of the Connecticut Association for Community Action. We're the state association that works with the 9 community action agencies across the state. They provide services to about 200,000 low-income people and all the communities, including all of your communities across the state. And I'm here today to provide support for House Bill 5781, an act concerning a study on the needs of senior citizens. Our community action agencies serve people from birth all the way up through older adult status. And several of our agencies do provide Meals on Wheels, and some also provide congregate meals and senior centers and other locations. And so specifically on this bill, we wanted to provide support for a study on elderly nutrition, given our experience with Meals on Wheels. We all know the importance of Meals on Wheels because it provides not just the daily nutrition that people need as they're aging in their communities, but also an opportunity to interact with somebody. So these meals combat loneliness and improve nutrition and promote overall health and well-being. So that is the importance of Meals on Wheels, which have become even more important as Connecticut has made the choice to rebalance our long-term care system and allow more people to age in their communities, whether in their homes or in other in downsizing into condos or other areas. We also have seen the price of groceries go way up. the cost of gasoline go up, and we know the cost of labor has gone up, and therefore the costs for Meals on Wheels have exponentially increased over the past couple of years, as we've seen all of these, which are the three main factors in the cost of Meals on Wheels, increase. And so I think that needs to be looked at as far as the adequacy of funding, but also the allocation of funding, because there appears to be some inequities as far as how the funding is distributed by the various area agencies on aging that do distribute the funding across the state. Some of our agencies tell us they are totally fine for funding this year. Others have had to cap enrollment, have had to reduce from 2 meals down to 1 per day, and generally make reductions to this really important program. So we're supportive of this study, specifically regarding the nutrition piece, and happy to provide any information that we can to help our state provide this program better now and moving forward into the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Yes, Representative Bohr.
Thank you, Senator. Hello, Deb. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. How are you?
Good, thank you. So Meals on Wheels, I'm in the New Haven County, right, West Haven, and we're working on a food policy council, and we learned that Meals on Wheels is at capacity and there's no new applications being accepted. So I think that speaks to the area on aging, some of them being at capacity, not have enough funding, but you're saying some are all set. So when you're talking about looking at the distribution of funding, what do you mean? Are you suggesting possibly that more funding go to the communities, like a county, like a New Haven County that has more need? What do you mean about looking at the redistribution of funding?
Yeah, this is apparently a really complicated program. And so the state gets the money in from the federal government. I think there may also be some state funding as well. Goes through, and I would recommend talking with Commissioner Porter about this, of course. The area agencies on aging across the state do contract out for this program. Some of the providers are community action agencies, and some are other community-based organizations. And just what we're hearing is, for example, one of our agencies is Community Renewal Team. They seem to be okay in their Hartford region. I think the city of Hartford may also have contributed some funds, but in Middletown, where they also provide Meals on Wheels, they do not have adequate funding, and they have had to cap the services that they provide there. So I think it's a really complicated funding for this program, and that's why I think a study is really important, and to figure out where the funding is coming from, where the funding is going, and where it's really needed. There's also, if I could just take an extra second, sorry. There is also a donation component to this. So our agencies are running fundraisers to raise funds for Meals on Wheels, and people who receive the meals are also encouraged but not required to make donations for their meals. And so I think we're getting an average of about 50 cents a meal from the recipients.
Okay, great. So I know a study would be important, right? But wouldn't those reports be available for us to look at? Wouldn't we, if we provide state funding, ask those who distribute the state funding for a report of where all that funding is going, and then ask all of those agencies that are receiving the funding, where is that funding going?
Yeah, and I think that that's part of the study, and then also figuring out, and what are the needs in the community?
Mm-hmm. Mm.
And we also know that delivering meals in a rural area is much different than delivering meals in an urban area, because you have to go further between meal drop-offs, use more gasoline, etc. So I do think there's a lot of different components to it.
Okay, understood and agreed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Representative Walensky.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Deb, thank you very much for your testimony. On the subject of Meals on Wheels, can you speak to the fact that there's been a little bit of a change in the way we deploy senior nutrition since the pandemic?
Yes, thank you for that opportunity, Representative Walensky. Before the pandemic, going to a congregate meal site was pretty much the norm if people could leave their homes. You know, for the homebound folks, we always had the Meals on Wheels, but a lot of individuals prefer to go out to a senior center setting and receive a meal there for lunch, chat with their friends, and get that really important daily socialization. When the pandemic hit, obviously changes needed to be made, and almost all the providers switched to home delivered meals instead of congregate meals. And that adds another layer of cost if you think about packaging the meal and then also the additional gasoline and wear and tear on the delivery vehicles and labor. And so that went on for the first couple of years. Now the congregate meal sites are starting to open up again. And so we're sort of in this hybrid mode, which is just perfect, given that that's what you all are doing as well, where some people are back to receiving meals in congregate settings and others are still receiving the Meals on Wheels at home.
Thank you very much for that. I mean, but it is safe to say that many communities have not gone back to the congregate meal setting. Is that true?
Yes, as far as I know, there are some communities that either have not yet reinstituted congregate meals at all, or if they have, they've only instituted them for 1 or 2 days a week instead of every day.
Also, my understanding, if you would just confirm this, Meals on Wheels does more than deliver meals. They're actually a safety net organization for folks that can't get out in the past or may not be able to get out in the in the current setting because there's no congregate place for them to go. But the health and welfare check piece of the Meals on Wheels, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but I consider that to be a safety net issue that needs to be considered, and I'm not certain we're paying the proper level of attention to that portion of the human services need.
I 100% agree with you. Social isolation is not just an issue of socialization, but it is an issue of health and overall well-being. And we know that so many of our older adults are feeling isolated in their homes. They're feeling lonely, and having somebody come to your door and bring you a hot meal, a smile, and check on you is so important. And when these meals are provided by a community action agency, which is who I'm here to talk about, those agencies can also connect them with other services in the community. So they're going in, they're saying, how are you doing today? Here's your meal, everything going okay? And if they sense that something isn't going okay, then they can have additional check-ins and additional resources provided to that person.
Thank you very much for all of that. And I'll stop my questioning now, Madam Chair, but I will end on a quick comment, which is this is a study that needs to be had so that we can actually understand the value that's in it, rather than treating it as a cost. There's also another component that I've learned from local nonprofits where money that was allocated in the 2022 budget isn't actually making it down to our nonprofits. So we do have community providers out there that are living hand to mouth on other pots of money, but in essence, there's services being withheld as we rob from Peter to pay Paul. So just for the information of others on this committee, the chairs of this committee are working on trying to ascertain how we can have a continuous conversation about the funding and making sure that things are getting into the communities where the folks that are the recipients need them so badly. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Bielanski. Are there other comments or questions? Seeing none, thank you so much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Is Peaches Quinn here? I don't see Ginger, no, not online. Okay. So we are going to move on to Regina Stankakis. Sorry, I'm butchering this last name. And following that, we will have Jeffrey Frazier.
Oh, there we go. Okay. My name is Regina Stankaitis. I'm a senior, I'm disabled, I'm a veteran, and I'm a victim. Victim is a word that I would never have used to describe myself. I'm educated, I have several degrees, I had a career as a business professional, and I thought this would never happen to me, but it did. I trusted the home healthcare agency. I trusted the caregiver, but I was wrong. After my knee surgery, I suffered post-operative delirium and was a high risk for falling and therefore needed a caregiver at home. The home healthcare agency claimed that they do background checks and train their caregivers. The home healthcare agency sent me a known felon who had recently had multiple arrests. Within 2 days, and I stress, within 2 days of the caregiver service, I was robbed, my identity was stolen, my checks were forged, she rented an apartment, used my social security number to open accounts, bought furniture and other items. Nobody understands the trauma or the impact of being a victim of senior exploitation. All my investments, my pensions, my 401ks were in jeopardy of being stolen. I was traumatized and now suffer from PTSD, and I'm afraid to live in my own home. While there are laws in Connecticut that are meant to protect older adults from fraud and exploitation, we need to do more to ensure that these cases can be recognized, reported, investigated, and appropriately responded to. That's why I support Senate Bill 901, an act concerning a registry of persons convicted of financial crimes against elderly persons. I believe policymakers should require a comprehensive national background check prior to the employment of all LTSS workers. Individuals who have been convicted of burglary, larceny, sexual crimes, crimes involving financial exploitation, or crimes involving abuse or neglect of vulnerable individuals should be prohibited from employment at all LTSS settings. In addition to these measures, creating a registry would help older adults by giving them access to information about individuals who may pose a risk to their well-being. A registry would allow older adults to check to see if someone has a history of committing financial crimes before they hire that person to provide assistance and let them in their home. I also support House Bill 5779, an act concerning a study of criminal penalties for abuse, abandonment, and financial exploitation of elderly persons, persons with disabilities, and conserved persons. My caregiver was arrested on 11 counts alone on my case, 11 counts. And the court plea hearings began on April 29, 2022, still going on, and they have continued each month. That caregiver is out on bail and is enjoying her life. I am the victim. I suffer from PTSD. There are many thousands of other seniors who are victims of elder abuse and exploitation. Maybe you know of someone or have a family member who has been exploited. We need your help to protect them and show them the care and support they deserve. I plead that you consider passing these bills for all Connecticut elderly who are abused and exploited. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your moving testimony. Are there comments or questions? Okay, Representative Belinsky.
Regina, thank you. Thank you for your story. I'm very moved and very sorry for the ordeal that you've been put through. I'm not in the business of looking like I'm correcting anything, but there are people that understand. There are people that have lived this through their own family members, and we're the ones that bring these bills. And you know, as a six-term person here in this General Assembly who focuses primarily on constituent service things first, always. I encounter cases like this every year, multiples, and every one of them is offensive. And thank you for self-identifying as a victim, because greater society seems to be trying to change who we define as victims now. But ultimately, we should have seen your caregivers' potential for abuse coming. And so I have no questions for you. I just want you to know that I understand your story completely,
Thank you.
and we'll fight to have this happen. We keep getting shut down on it, but the fight's not over.
I would like to add also too, that there are so many seniors that are out there that are too embarrassed and too afraid to come forward. I'm not afraid. I have nothing to lose. I lost it already. So, but I mean, looking at it, you could have had a relative, you could have had a neighbor, you could have had somebody that you know who was exploited and was afraid to come forward.
Thank you. Representative Garabay.
I also want to thank you for being brave enough to come and to testify and tell us your story. I have heard, like Rep. Belinsky, these stories from constituents. And I just see that it's common sense to have these background checks. As anyone that works in schools with any vulnerable populations, we have things in place for that to happen. And it needs to happen with our seniors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Marks.
Thank you, Chair Hockadell. Through you, I am a visiting nurse, and one of the reasons that I ran for office was because I see the home care industry, especially the homemakers, companions, the smaller home care industry is very unregulated. The way their workers are treated and the way the seniors are treated is disgraceful. I hope I have a long tenure in the Senate, and when I leave that I have been a champion to make this industry better, to protect the workers and to protect our seniors. My question to you is, I have seen awful situations, especially with the people who live in, with people who need 24/7 care. Both conditions where the workers have to sleep and they get no supervision, they get no break, but also how the seniors are left alone at times and their things are stolen. My question to you is, who did you go to get help when you realized that your identity had been stolen? And how difficult a process was it for you? Because I just know that often the police are called and that there isn't really then an avenue for somebody who is already fragile, if they don't have family, to follow up with the situation. So I'm just curious what happened. What was your situation like when you realized that your identity had been stolen?
It was terrible, actually. Like you said, I went to the police first. I'm a little old lady, that's how it was treated, smirk on his face and everything else. I also am a bulldog. So I, went after things. I, tried all the state agencies. I tried all the federal agencies to get something taken care of, and they just punted it around from one agency to another to another. I think, one of the issues that's out there is that there are so many different definitions for home healthcare aides or home healthcare organizations that there's no real anybody doing checks and balances in that area as well. I think, they're understaffed as well too. But then I found the, believe it or not, the state agency with Commissioner Amy Porter they helped me very much so in getting things resolved. I had tried the Consumer Protection Organization. I thought that they would protect me, but not really. That's not the case. So I had an awful lot of success with that particular, with Commissioner Amy Porter and her agency. They really helped me out a lot to find my way.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's just, you shouldn't have to be a bulldog to be able to get help. I'm dealing with a situation with a constituent right now, and as a senator, I thought it would be a little easier, but it's maybe a little bit easier. So I thank you for bringing this up. None of these agencies are licensed. They can all pretty much do what they want to do. They don't have background checks. They don't even have to get a PPD. You can have a patient with active tuberculosis going in and taking care of a patient. And the only reason why I know that is because I used to, one of my roles as a visiting nurse was we would go daily to the active TB patients out in the community, and we'd have to just watch them take their medication. Not that they weren't going to, but that was just a check and a balance to be able to make sure that they were staying home, they were staying isolated, and that they were taking their medications daily for their TB medication, so they didn't have to be hospitalized. And that one of the lovely, lovely woman, but she had active TB, and she had been with an 85-year-old, very frail woman for 3 weeks before her TB had been diagnosed. So then that woman was also, had very close contact with somebody from TB. I think you would just kind of think before somebody came to take care of you or your loved one that they would have to have a yearly PPD taken. So I hear you. We're going to have to take baby steps in the beginning, but I hope to be a champion of this by the time my tenure as a senator is over.
Thank you. Before I leave, I just want to say one more thing. You had asked as far as like what agencies have helped me. I would like to say that the Eversource was going to charge me $2,000 for energy bills that the lady, had, made in that apartment that she was in. And so Eversource was not going to relinquish that. And so I was very fortunate to talk to the Attorney General's office. There's a great attorney in there, Sandra Arenas, and she was my advocate, and she helped them not to bill me for that $2,000 worth of expenses that girl incurred. So, that's another agency that I find very comforting.
Thank you for that. Any other questions? Seeing none?
Thank you.
We now have Jeffrey Frazier, and we will be followed by Elizabeth Stern.
Good morning, Senator Hockedal, Representative Garibay, all committee members. My name is Jeffrey Frazier from Meriden. I enthusiastically support SB 902 to establish family councils in assisted living. But I do ask that the bill be strengthened with new language that's included in my written testimony. My mom passed away last May at the age of 104. She had a wonderful life. Her passing was peaceful, pain-free. For the last 6 years of her life, Mom was a resident of Sunrise Assisted Living in Stamford. And we had a family council there. Our council members came together sharing similar feelings and concerns. We wanted the very best care for our loved ones, doing whatever possible to assure they were happy and safe. Wanted to better understand the policies and operations of the assisted living community. And when necessary, we addressed crises such as the COVID-19 pandemic. In 2020, my mom's facility became a COVID hot zone. Of a total of only 78 residents, there were 12 COVID-related deaths, 12 lost of 78. Family councils provided an opportunity to meet as a group with management staff, ask questions, inform staff of our own perspectives, and express opinions and experiences that were related to us by our loved ones. The topics over the years were wide-ranging. We talked about staff turnover, which was a chronic problem. We addressed issues such as personal care services, recreational activities, menu options in the dining room, building maintenance, billing practices, and more. And then during COVID, we focused on nursing operations, infection control measures, vaccination programs, lockdown, and visitation policies. I so much value this group for the mutual support we gave to one another, for the information we gathered at meetings, and for our collective strength to advocate for changes in facility policies and practices when we thought that was necessary. Family councils play an essential role, and long-term care management must be required by statute to support them. I do ask the committee to include additional language to strengthen the bill. A major concern is that 902 only requires facility management to assist in the quote establishment unquote of family councils, not in their ongoing operation. Once a family council is created, we need management help in sending meeting notices, providing meeting space, participating in meetings, and more. My specific recommendations are my written testimony. I also just want to quickly respond to questions previously raised by committee members concerning participation when there's a disagreement between a resident and a family member. SB 902 already has explicit language, which begins at line 77, requiring the consent of the resident for a family member to participate in the family council. So thank you to committee members for all you do to protect our senior citizens. And Les, I just want to give a special shout out of gratitude to the committee staff. Both Ginger Rodriguez and Rich Ferrari have been so helpful to the public who, as we try to navigate the system for testifying, they've been very patient and responsive. So thank you to Ginger and Rich.
Thank you for your testimony. Comments or questions? Representative Belinsky.
I'm very sorry for your loss, and thank you for testifying and being so articulate and even pointing us to the lines in question. So sorry for your loss. Thank you, Madam.
At age 104, I can't complain. And you're never ready to lose a parent, but she had a great life. Thank you.
Glad to hear that. Thank you. If there are no other comments or questions. All right, Elizabeth Stern.
Good day. Good day, Senator Huckadell and Representative Garibay and all members of the committee. My name is Liz Stern. I support SP 902, and I'm here to share firsthand experience about the invaluable benefits of a family council. My parents lived in Madison, Connecticut, and they were snowbirds who wintered in Naples for 30 years, but at 87 and 90 years old, they had all their affairs in order. They didn't ever plan on my mother's paralyzing stroke that occurred in 2016, nor my father's dementia, nor his legal blindness. They never foresaw a life in a nursing home or a managed residential community. Like many, they anticipated only living in their house for the rest of their lives. Since spring 2016, post-stroke, or after spring 2016, my mom, in need of total care, was settled into her new home, a nursing home in Mystic. My dad moved 2 miles away to his managed residential community. Dad was hanging on to the keys of his car in spite of his impaired sight, and he was impacted by his cognitive decline at that time. But that was nearly 7 years ago. Today, my 97-year-old dad still resides in independent living at his community. And I use the word independent quite loosely, as my dad is legally blind, has significant memory challenges, and has a caregiver 6 hours a day, every day. For the past year, it has become glaringly evident that there is a need, but no vehicle for family support in his community. Family support that could provide a more inclusive community, a sense of community when many feel alone. Some background on what I've been doing since 2016. In 2017, I started a family council at my mom's nursing home. We met monthly. Several times a year, we invited our regional ombudsman and other speakers to present on a variety of topics. We shared monthly agendas and minutes with administration. But most importantly, we supported residents, families, and staff. We discussed mutual concerns, on occasion brought those concerns to the nursing home administration. This family council support provided a genuine sense of community. The support provided resources and education when there were questions and concerns, and there was always empathy, even when there was no solution to the problems. My mother died in 2020, and the family council at her nursing home continues to this day.
Could you summarize for us, please? Your time is up.
Okay, I want to just say that a family council provides a service or structure for families as they care for their aging loved ones. I'm very encouraged by everything I've heard so far, especially Representative Cheeseman's testimony, and also the questions that the committee has raised show that there's good insight and understanding of the need for the bill. I'm very appreciative to speak today and am open for any questions at this time.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good to see you again, Liz. We served together on the Governor's Council on Nursing Homes right in the midst of COVID. And I'd just like to ask, how did the Family Resident Council serve during COVID? What role did that play?
Oh, that's a good question. Sadly, we did not meet during COVID. I can tell you personally, I was so taken with the shift in our family. My mother had care every day. She was a total care, resident, and I have to tell you, my voice starts to quiver because it was such a devastating thing for our family just to manage. And so at that time, I shifted gears and worked very, very closely with the Ombudsman program to take care of my mother. So there was a bit of a hiatus during COVID, but then when my mother died in November of that first year of COVID, there was another family member who took over, and that woman continues with the, running the family council there at this time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm so sorry for the loss of your mother. We talked about it then. Is the family member who is continuing with the resident council, is it largely family led or facilitated, I should ask, because that was one of the questions that came up.
Yes, and it was a good question. And I think some of the questions that were generated were excellent. It's run by families. There's always the thread to the administration. And I don't know if they're still doing this now, but we had an agenda prior to every meeting. The agenda was given to the administration. There were minutes, and I still have all those minutes from my 3 years. And the minutes were forwarded to administration after each meeting as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. Was it your experience that the administration was more responsive in response to this regular family council meeting and their concerns?
Absolutely depended on who the administration was. And in the 4 years that my mother was there, I think there were 5 different administrators. But it wasn't just the administrators. We worked with department heads. So if we would ask the head of dining or the nutrition, the gentleman who came in every Wednesday who did nutrition, to come in and speak with us. So we didn't just work with administration, we worked with department heads as well, and with CNAs and nurses.
Thank you so much. That's just a critical piece I wanted to explore a little more. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Hughes. Yes, Representative Garibay.
Thank you. I don't know if Rep. Hughes or if the person that just testified knows how many facilities already have family councils.
I can address that. That's a question, and I neglected to tell you that there's a statewide family council at this time that meets monthly, and we're looking for that as well, because the ombudsman program is spread so thin. We thought we would go through the regional ombudsman to find out, where they are. I can tell you one thing, at the
facility where my mother lived for 4 years, there was a box that you could check if there was a family council, and that was always checked. And there was discussion about, on Representative Cheeseman's part about this being, not her words, but mine, a win-win situation. I feel very strongly about that as well. So often people are go to their managed residential community with their loved ones, with their daughters or sons by their side. If I walk into a facility and I see there's a family council, to me that, this is the one I'm going to pick over another facility that doesn't have one. I think they're not prevalent. The short answer is they're not prevalent, but we're working hard.
Thank you.
Seeing no other questions or comments, thank you for your testimony. And we will go to Cindy Prezio. And then after that, we have Mairead Painter.
Morning. I fell last week chasing a legislator. Somebody said I should say they tripped me. Sorry, legislators. I just want to make sure, because I've never spoken before this committee before, so I've got to get the names right. I want to say good morning to Senator Hockadell, who we don't know each other, Representative Garibay, and ranking members Lisa Seminara and Representative Belinsky, and all distinguished members of the Aging Committee. And that's all I'm going to do. So my name is Cindy Prezio, and I represent an organization. I'm sure you've seen me at the Capitol the past 4 or 5 years, but my clients, we service people on the sex offense registry and their families. And I have to tell you, we are vehemently opposed to letting another registry that will harm the state of Connecticut out of the gate. Registries are easy go-to defaults, but they're not prevention. Nobody looks at the systemic causes of the problems. And I know there's on the consent calendar in this committee, there's a something about getting together a work group to study the elders' needs. I have to beg you, based on the harms I know that happen to people on the registry, that you defer this. You do not let another bad registry out of the gate of Connecticut. Middletown, the Department of Emergency Services and Public Safety couldn't handle another registry. Registries are costly and they're filled with ghastly errors. People who are dead are on registries. I can identify as a victim. I've had mental health issues since about probably 2004. And during a very low time in my life, an attorney committed malpractice that cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars potentially. I've got him on my phone saying he committed malpractice. I had no recourse. So I don't want him on a public registry. I was almost scammed a month ago trying to buy a car for my son. Do you know how many scams there are on Facebook right now in terms of car resellers? I don't want him on a registry. Registries hurt not only the people on them and their families, including their children, but anybody who lives at that address and society at large. Was that my bell or my 1 minute?
Yes, no, that's the time. If you could just summarize, please.
Oh, okay. So what I want to ask for is that the human cost is even greater than the $1 million the taxpayers are going to pay just at implementation. And that we don't want to create a scam. We don't want to sell something that claims to be public safety when I can tell you all the science is behind me. It isn't. You don't get public safety by shaming, naming, and blaming people. You do get it by giving them resources and rehabilitating them.
Thank you. Comments or questions, Representative Hughes?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for your testimony. Would you have a alternative solution to protecting elders from especially financial exploitation by caregivers? What would that look like?
You know, I don't have the solution. That's why I was deferring it to, I was surprised that this bill came up. And I thought there was a bill similar to this. Oh, public health maybe, or with Saud Anwar and Gillian Gilchrist last year. So I was a bit surprised that somebody's suggesting another public registry, because unless you know the registry we have, you're going to create so many more problems and unleash something that is inherently evil. I am a victim, right? I'm an aging person as well. I just don't know how we need to look in depth at the systemic causes of the problem. Education and interventions that are non-carceral. Do you know what we spend on the carceral solutions versus prevention? A prevention is a drop in the bucket. What if we reverse that and we started really taking care of what's needed, preventing this stuff? So I guess, Representative Hughes, I would fall back on educational interventions as a starting point.
Thank you for that. We have another act concerning a study of criminal penalties, increasing criminal penalties for abuse, abandonment, and financial exploitation. And I think that the purpose of the bill is to strengthen the protections, the background checks, the protections for people hiring caregivers or for people being in close contact with elderly, especially with dementia, that kind of thing, to protect those folks and finding a way for those service providers to strengthen their due diligence, I suppose, in hiring, agency hiring or personal hiring. And so I think that is not necessarily the public registry, but strengthening a way for providers to do their due diligence to protect their clients. So what I'm hearing from your testimony is that the public registry is not science-based and doesn't work, but that there do need to be more protections, especially against financial crimes against elderly. Would you concur with that?
I would concur with getting the work group together to really do an in-depth with all the stakeholders at the table.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions? Representative Belinsky.
Madam, thank you for your testimony. We heard from another individual a few moments ago about a case of heinous financial abuse that occurred without the prior knowledge of a couple of handfuls of prior convictions by the person who upset and stole their identity, ruined their financial life. For all the downsides of a public registry, shining a little bit of light on convicted felons that have committed these crimes so that they don't commit them upon others, is where victimhood should live.
You know how unwell you must know by all the shootings that have been nationally and the death of Tyre Nichols. We are an unwell society.
Yes, we are.
We will continue to be unwell until we get ahead of this with prevention and education rather than carceral solutions. And so I have to vehemently disagree with you. Let's look at prevention and really get at it, even if it takes a couple of years. I myself is a victim of financial, but I want to tell you, I've got a 95-year-old who came from quite a bit of money. And she was scammed a few years ago. She's in my community. She's a mother of a person on the registry. $150,000 was scammed from her. No way to get it back. And so I can tell you, after her son, her adult son, was on the public registry for 10 years, she'd rather be homeless than to have her son on the public registry. Maslow's pyramid in terms of basic human needs, we're robbing people of basic human needs and we're robbing them of their potential and the potential to really give back to the communities. So again, public registries are quick fixes and feelings aren't facts, and the facts and the science is behind me.
I vehemently disagree with you, ma'am. Because the facts are there are people that have been convicted. And there should be visibility as far as those offenders. We are the aging committee, and within our purview, we do policy. We do policy to protect people that are aging. We are not the committee of cognizance over incarcerative policies. That's something that we have other committees to do. My primary goal with this policy from this committee is to protect the people that are on the front line as victims from people that are perpetrators.
You're talking about a modern day pillory, and Connecticut and the national trend is to give people a second chance, some of which had not. I mean, a lot of the people who do bad things were victims themselves, or had had a lot of trauma and adverse childhood experience in their lives. We're not looking at that at all. And so, again, I have to say to you, public shaming and calling out is not the way to go. We should actually be helping all and providing more resources. And Connecticut's got to stand up for what it believes in. We're either a second chance state or we're not. And I'll tell you, you should speak to people in the know about the sex offense registry. And I'm happy to talk to you, Rep. Belinsky, privately, because you would be aghast at the errors on that registry. Aghast. They cannot handle another one. And they shouldn't either. It is, as I said, a quick fix, but it does not get at the roots of the cause of the problems. Let's do it right, Connecticut. And I respect what you're trying to do. We are preventionists ourselves. It's just that if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And the science with registries, there's 0% evidence that it does not prevent future crime, and it does not create safer communities. In fact, it creates more harm and creates more crime.
I look forward to seeing that evidence.
Thank you. Senator Marks.
Thank you, Chair Hockadell, through you. Thank you, ma'am, for your testimony. I have heard stories about the registries and that and it is very costly to make them. But I think the simplest thing, there has to be a compromise, because there are many seniors or frail people, those that disabled, that have to have caregivers in their homes, that are being abused. And I think the companies that send the caregivers out, they're unregulated, they don't need a license, they have no oversight, and that the simplest thing right now is that they should have to do a background check. And I think that would be a very simple, easier place to start with, that before you send anybody into a home with somebody who is fragile, that we do a background check on that employee.
I can't imagine we don't. I mean, I'm with you all the way. I just know that public registries just don't do what you want it to do. If they did and they created true public safety, then I have nothing to talk about. But I've been living this, and you can see in my testimony, for 8 years. And one set of harms to replace with another set of harms, when we're trying to figure out what we've done, unleashing the Connecticut sex offense registry makes no sense to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you very much. I look forward to getting to know you.
Thank you. Next we have Mairead Painter, followed by Kevin Hassett. Rennie.
Good morning, Senator Huckadell, Representative Garibay, Ranking Member Senator Seminara, Representative Bolinsky, and distinguished members of the Aging Committee. I'm Mairead Painter, the State Long-Term Care Ombudsman. The Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program is mandated by the Older Americans Act and the Connecticut General Statutes to provide services to protect the health, safety, welfare, and rights for residents in long-term care communities. You have my full written testimony, but I'd also like to testify personally today on a few bills. The first one being SB 902, an act concerning the establishment of family councils in managed residential communities, providing assisted living services. The Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program supports the bill to encourage and support the establishment of family councils in managed residential communities, providing assisted living services. Families play a key role in helping to ensure and promote residents' rights, quality of care, and quality of life. Public Act 21-85, an act concerning nursing homes and dementia specialty care units, included provisions to require each nursing home and dementia specialty care unit to encourage and assist in the establishment of family councils to encourage and support open communication between facilities, residents, families, and friends. SB 902 would extend these rights to residents, family members, and friends in managed residential communities. I've seen firsthand how the positive impacts of family involvement can have on residents and their well-being and the adoption of best practices in managed residential communities. The desire for residents to have the support of their family members became even more evident during the pandemic. Some managed residential communities had informal groups of family members that supported them, working together to support the interest of their loved ones. Many residents did not feel they had a voice outside of their community, and they felt vulnerable, as if they didn't have anyone reaching out for them and overarching concerns weren't addressed. The Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program and National Consumer Voice for Quality of Long-Term Care have tools available for leading resident and family councils. The Consumer Voice reports that family councils can play a critical role in voicing concerns, requesting improvements, supporting new family members, residents, and supporting efforts to make care in the life of a community the best it can be. Currently here in Connecticut, we have one of the country's first statewide family councils, but it's only for skilled nursing facilities. This group has been very active in promoting communication and helping to ensure that residents' voices are heard as well as their rights protected. In 2022, the Kaiser Family Foundation reported that 27% of Connecticut's skilled nursing facilities have family councils, but we don't have any data related to assisted living. Those are just informal groups that meet. This group is working to promote family councils and promote the quality of care and quality of life and ensure that it is optimized. The Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program has worked to support the establishment of the statewide family council, and we would welcome family councils from managed residential communities as well. This bill also considers residents who may want a higher level of autonomy and choice and to know whether or not they want their family members to be involved, requiring that they provide an agreement in writing saying that they want their family members involved. I also very much support that. Allowing family councils can increase communication that enables communities to address concerns more broadly. And these are not only established to address concerns, they also help new family members feel engaged, as this can be a really difficult time for family members as they adjust to their loved ones being in a new setting. So again, we support this bill. The second bill I'd like to speak to today is House Bill 5779, an act concerning a study of criminal penalties for abuse, abandonment, and financial exploitation of elderly persons and persons with disabilities or conserved persons. I support the creation of a task force to study criminal penalties for abuse, abandonment, and financial exploitation of elderly persons and persons with disabilities and conserved persons. There are several factors that place these individuals at a higher risk of abuse, abandonment, and financial exploitation. It is imperative that the state take a proactive, sorry, I just lost my page here. That's always helpful. Take a proactive approach in holding people accountable. Sorry. In addition, a task force will provide an opportunity to review current policies and laws to determine if they are adequate or if there need to be added protections. It is important that task forces allow for stakeholder engagement and inform the legislature and state policy. The creation of a task force sends a clear message that the state and legislature take the issue of abuse, abandonment, and financial exploitation seriously and demonstrate the commitment to finding solutions that may prevent future crimes. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today, and I'm available if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, especially for our conversations. Yes, Representative Hughes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mairead, for all you've done through the pandemic and beyond. We're really, really fortunate to have you and your office's work and testimony in the trenches. Considering HB 5779, I know it's just about a task force, but what do you think about requiring universal background checks on all providers of home care to elderly?
I strongly agree. I don't believe we should have anyone going in and having access to anyone. We wouldn't want anyone in any of our homes or taking care of anyone we cared about or ourselves without knowing and being able to ensure that there was an appropriate background check done.
I mean, this is this HB 5779 is about possibly strengthening penalties, which actually I'm all for, because I want to make sure they show up in background checks. See, that's the checks and balances. I want to make sure they show up in background checks, but I think that would be a much more universal and fair way to go about, but it doesn't protect the people that have informal, non-hired caregivers that are conducting this. And that is becoming much more of an issue as well. Is almost every setting I go into, I hear from people that have been targeted by, non-paid scammers, basically, or not paid by them anyways. And I know we work closely with your office to try to figure out how to protect folks more and more that are being called on the phone, they're being shown up at their doorstep or being befriended or romantically, connived into giving up assets and resources or funding. And I just wondered, in terms of HB 5779, if you have any ideas of how to approach that.
Yes, well, thank you. And for your participation previously on the Elder Justice Task Force and Coalition, which we've talked about this a great deal. And I think one of the reasons why I am in support of a task force is to really understand how we can provide education, outreach, because that's also a big tool. How do we educate the public on what to look for? Warning signs, who to reach out to. I know that came up today. It's really difficult to figure out where in the state you call and how to get things addressed. It's challenging even when we get calls sometimes. We do have the statewide toll-free or the statewide number now at the Attorney General's office. But we know that there's still gaps and there are still places where I think we need to improve, and having input from stakeholders and the community to know where some of those gaps are is really important. So that's why I think a task force might help with that. So we, like you said, people come forward all the time. I think we need to canvass and understand what's happening in the community. Now people have individuals coming into their homes again. What does that look like? And where are the pinch points or areas of challenge?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Hughes. Senator Marks.
Thank you, Chair Huckadell, through you. Hi.
Hi.
I just texted you.
I know.
So
I will
I've
get
been-
back to you shortly.
I know, what a small world. I've been trying to get in touch with her. So a task force. I've only been on this job for a month.
a month, like on the 4th, it's a month. And I've just heard task force don't work, that you make a task force and then people end up not putting people on the task force. Home care, the home care industry is expanding. I don't have to tell you that. I mean, I think we've gone to 200 to 600 agencies now. And I'm not talking about the VNAs and the ones that work through Medicare and Medicaid. They're very, very regulated. I work with them. I spend half my time doing paperwork and half my time with my clients. I'm talking about the smaller agencies that are sending out homemakers and companions. They're not regulated. They have no license. They have no oversight. So a task force is lovely, but like the problem is so blatant. I see this every single day when I go into patients' homes, and I'll go into somebody that needs 24/7 help, and they call an agency and they think they're going to get somebody that has had a background check, that has had training, that knows what a DNR means, that knows what a special diet means, that knows how to assess for changes in skin if they're getting a bed sore, that would know how to call somebody. And this has happened like probably almost as many fingers as I have in my hand, that the person that they got, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this person, I'm just saying this person is probably in crisis. If you go to the homeless hospitality center and tell somebody they can have a place to live for the next 6 weeks if they want to come work and take care of this patient. Being unhoused is really sad, but that person is in crisis, and they're probably not the best person to take care of somebody that needs help 24/7. And this happens all the time. They bring in somebody, somebody to come visit them, which in some ways you can't blame them. They're in a house for 24/7. They are not allowed to leave. They're lonely, but you don't want another person coming in. We have cameras now. We have so many ways of double checking on things. The nanny cams. Why don't we have a homemaker companion cam? The abuse that is happening is widespread, and nobody goes out and talks about it because either the person dies or they don't have anybody to talk about it, or then their loved one ends up dying and they're so exhausted anyways by the whole ordeal that you just don't have, life is hard. You don't have the capacity. So our taxpayer money is going to pay for a lot of these people to stay. So if you're on Title 19, you can get the home care program for elders, and you can get 24/7 care. You can get caregivers all the time. So it's our money paying for these caregivers, and they have no oversight. And I'm here. I've been here for a month. I'm not sure how I go about using my role as a senator to be the vehicle that changes this industry, but I hope I can work with you that we can do it. We need an ombudsman for the home care industry, because when I did call your office about a very sad event that happens, I was told this is only for long-term care and I should call Elder Protective Services. I've called Elder Protective Services so many times in my life, and they do a good job, but I knew that that wasn't the person that I was supposed to call. And I got your number because I got a state's attorney brought into it. So is a task force really going to work? I mean, if we were to really sit and have a cup of coffee, and I'm putting you on the spot and I apologize.
I appreciate it.
I
No,
am
that's
just really passionate about this, and I can't believe I actually get to sit and talk like in public about this, because it has been like something for 10 years I've been wanting to do. Is a task force really going to work? We need to license this industry. We need to have oversight of this industry. Just like we do with our daycare providers. I mean, we just can't be letting anybody go out and take care of our fragile elder people who have given their lives to make our world a better place, right?
I totally agree. So I'm going to say a few things. One, welcome. And thank you for being here. And I feel like we're gonna probably have lots of cups of coffee. So, and I feel like you sort of just rolled out the red carpet for all of the things that we have been saying, that I've been saying for years. And I'm extremely thankful that the legislature last year passed that we have a community ombudsman program. However, only one position was funded. So without funding to actually have the individuals to go out and work with and educate and inform and provide real representation for people's rights, right? It's not about being a patient. It's about who you are. You live in the community, the right to live in the community and to live in the community safely, and understanding your rights around that. Just like the family council in the managed residential communities, individuals who live in their homes sometimes want things to go differently than their family or loved ones might foresee for them, and understanding their rights around that. And that really would be that role to help guide people when something happens, and to walk them through from the time that they begin to have long-term services and supports all the way through potentially their last day on hospice, that the community ombudsman and the regional ombudsman team work with them and help guide them through ensuring that they have the access to the information they need to make the choices that are right for them. We all have also different levels of risk that we're willing to take. Some people are okay with high levels of risk, and they say, well, maybe I will chance it and I'll pay a lower rate. My daughter, son, family member, friend knows someone that I'm willing to have come into my house, where other people would say, no, that's not okay with me. I would really like to have all of these checks in place. And it's about understanding and accepting those risks as you feel are acceptable to you. But the reason that I am supporting a task force would be that I think we need information around that, and we need to understand each step, because what we've done is we've legislated things, we have things in place, but they're very siloed and pocketed, and we need to see how the entire system can work together. Last session, we also, there was a bill passed to have a task force or a working group related to Homemaker Companion, and I was a part of that, and it was a very active group. And the one thing I think we all learned in the state, in different agencies, is that the word PCA means something different to each of us, right? And so a PCA in different groups, under different waivers, under different services, has different requirements and different things they're able to do, from giving medication to prompting for medication to not doing anything with medication. And so one of the things that we identified is, yes, there's a need. I think there is a need, obviously, for staff in my department and additional team members to provide protections, but also to ensure that we have a good list somewhere that describes for people what each of these words mean. If we can't figure it out in the state agencies and know exactly where the overlaps and the gaps are, how are we expecting individuals in the community who are taking this on, usually at a very trying time in their life? People aren't looking for home care because it's been their best day, right? They're usually in crisis, something's happening, and they're trying to find stability. And so we need to afford them with every opportunity to be able to make the best decisions for them.
I agree. A lot needs to be done, but I will say that those people that are paying the little higher price for some of those agencies have no oversights. They still have no oversight. So you don't know where they got that employee. They don't know if that employee had a background check. You don't know what kind of training that employee did, even though it might be the office that has the nice front door and the pretty carpeting in it. It doesn't mean that it's any better than any other office. I can remember she was my favorite patient, Rose, and she was 102 years old, and she had a DNR, like she had the orange bracelet that if she died, do not resuscitate. So I was just there once a month through the CCCI elder care program. And I would put up big signs, if she dies, don't call, you don't call anybody, you call her daughter. We don't want and the nurse can come out, a nurse may pronounce. I would call the agency and say, every new person you send here, you have, this is a huge thing. Like when somebody, end of life, how that all happens at the very, very end, your death story is just as important as your birth story. And I love birth stories, and I actually like death stories. I'm a
I agree
hospice
with you.
nurse. I mean, it's just there, it can be a beautiful thing. So no matter what I did, and Rose died, Rose stopped breathing, and guess what? The bells and the whistles came, and they did the CPR, and it might not, oh, that's too bad. But you know what? To Rose and her family, that was huge. And it's just, I can talk on this for a really, really long time, but I just, we're listening to the working group tonight, and I'm excited for that. But if defining what a PCA is to each agency, that's a great little tiny little start. But this needs some really big fixes. And there are a lot of our elders that are really getting hurt out in the community, and workers that are really getting hurt out in the community.
Thank you for that, Senator Marks. Senator Seminator.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Ms. Painter, for your testimony. I'm very happy to hear of your support of 902. I just have a quick question. So we talked earlier, there was some testimony earlier, and I asked if having the ombudsman participate in the family, the family group would be preferable. And the prior person testimony, Representative Cheeseman said that that would be a great idea. I too think it would be a great idea. However, I do question whether we have a labor shortage, and I'm sure there's a labor shortage of ombudsmen as well. So my question to you is, do you feel that you and your organization would be able to develop a program for families to get started, to help them to start these groups and then be able to carry them on without regular intervention from you, and maybe just periodic intervention from you attending and help facilitating these groups?
The answer is yes. And so we are already required at a state and federal level to support resident and family councils. And here in Connecticut, about 15 years ago, we also assumed the role overarching and working with managed residential communities, also known as assisted living communities, both at a state and federal level. Again, but we've received the mandate, but we didn't receive the funding. We did receive a couple of positions to help with that. We had 3 additional positions that went down to 2. So bandwidth is a challenge. We do need, in order to continue this work and to branch out any further, my team is pretty taxed right now. But one of the things that we've done as a way to try to support that, we have team members that will go out. They will talk to residents and families about how to establish a family council. On our webpage, there's actually a resident and family council section, and there's help on how to do that. As available, if they're willing to work with our team members, my administrative assistant is here today. She helps. We can schedule meetings for regional ombudsman to go out and meet with them. And then the other thing that I learned during the pandemic with family members is I started doing Facebook Lives. And as part of those sessions and reaching out with family members, we established, like I said, one of this country's first statewide family councils. And out of my federal funds, I have a Zoom account where I support family councils and they can meet virtually. And so that it's no cost to them, it's no cost to either the nursing home or the assisted living. They just let us know on what evening or what day they want to use that. And we give them the Zoom link to support them in that. And then we'll work with them either virtually or on site to start those family councils. And then they can join the statewide family council in order to be further supported by individuals who also know what they're going through. And in the nursing homes, we've been really pushing to ensure that all families know about that. And if this passed, we would do the same thing in the managed residential communities. And we've worked well with the associations and asking them to get that information out to their communities.
Thank you so much for sharing that with me.
Thank you, Senator. Online, we have Representative Moore that would like to ask you a question.
Sure.
Hi, thank you. And I apologize if you said this already and you're repeating yourself, but I'm also in commerce at the same time. We're all juggling multiple meetings. How would a family know that you exist and that they can reach out to you?
So a lot of that is outreach and information that we try to provide. It should also be provided once someone becomes a resident in a long-term care community, whether it be a nursing home, a residential care home, or an assisted living community. I do a lot of outreach through television, radio, but I'm happy if you want to provide any other suggestions on ways that we could get that information out to people. What I've heard mostly is that it's through word of mouth. When someone goes into a facility, goes into a long-term care community, a resident may tell another resident. We have postings up in the communities, and then my team members are out in all nursing homes once a quarter. They also try to get to every assisted living community once a quarter as they're able.
Okay, great, thanks. And going back, I think Senator Marks was touching on this before. So do you provide services for elderly who are in homes, like living with a family or on their own that have aides that come in?
So legislatively, we have the ability to. We will have one manager starting to develop and grow that program over the next couple of months. And then as appropriations are available, we will have additional team members to support going into and supporting people who live in the community.
Okay, so if a lot of the information about your availability or your services are some of it's word of mouth, or the facilities will let them know. If you're an elderly person living in a home, how will they know?
Well, we currently, and we would continue to work with 211. So if someone called and had an issue or a concern, we would make sure we were available through the 211 system, the myplacect.org, which I would encourage people to go to find information related to long-term services and supports. And then what I envision, and again, it hasn't been written yet, but what I am envisioning for that role is that whenever someone starts to go on to home care, or in particular, starts receiving long-term services and supports through the state of Connecticut, through the home care program for elders, or any waiver, long-term care waiver services, that part of their initial information and the information they would receive would be about their rights and access to our program, that it's free and confidential. So that's really important for individuals to understand as well. We are not mandated reporters. When a resident speaks to us, they're speaking only to us, and we work at the direction of the resident or the individual. So if it's someone in an assisted living community and they call and they talk to us about something that's happened or something they're experiencing, we can give them advice. We can suggest paths that they take to find resolution, but we do not overarch in, and we don't report it to anyone unless they specifically give us direction to do that.
Okay, great, thank you. And then I caught the tail end of you referencing a task force. Was that, but what was popping up on the screen was a task force to look at criminal penalties, or was this a task force to look at the industry of aides and companions? What task force were you referencing?
I was referencing the current bill related to a task force for criminal penalties.
Okay, which we have a sentencing commission, right, that does review that, and probably something that has to go to judicial. But I also heard the conversation about elderly in their home and the challenge with aides. And I'll be saying this many times in this committee. I am one of those daughters who had a mom who lived here, and she was on Title 19, and we did have a lot of aides come and go. The turnover, or who stole, who never showed up. I know it's a challenge to find experienced workers, but also the screening of the workers before they go into the home is very, very important as well. So I heard you say that earlier, and I'm glad you're touching on that. And I'm glad this ombudsman program will be available for those who are in homes and not necessarily in a facility.
Thank you. Yes, it is like finding gold when you find, and they are out there. We have a lot of caregivers that do a wonderful job and support people. And we've seen the number of individuals being served and receiving their long-term services and supports in the community grow greatly with a lot of success and wonderful outcomes. However, when there are challenges, when there is abuse and neglect, we want to ensure that that's addressed to the person's satisfaction and that we see accountability.
Good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Ward. Representative Garabay.
Welcome,
Hello.
Ms. Painter. Talking about getting gold, I wish we could clone you.
Thank you.
Just a little bit, we did have the task force on the long-term care or on the home care, right?
We had several task forces.
Right,
yes.
and then it was the working group for adult centers, adult day centers. And I'm like you, I get very impatient. You want it done now. You see the suffering as you do. We know we have challenges, but out of those two, the ones I dealt with, the task force and the working group, probably 7 or 8 of the bills that we are moving forward this session came out of those groups. And what I find in the task force, and this one was so well done with all the professionals that were appointed to it, looking at, you know, those. And as a legislator, you can sit on them, you can watch them, you don't really participate. But that's where they're valuable. And I can later point out which ones are coming out of those groups. And we're doing a hearing later and more, we'll decide what comes out of that, because that was very intense with 28 pages. I mean, and so well done. So I thank you for all the work you do.
Thank you.
Senator Marks.
Thank you, through you, Chair Huckadell. And I do want to just echo what you said. There are so many home health aides, homemakers, companions that are unbelievable. And many of our seniors are aging in place with just wonderful care and are very happy. So I know sometimes you just hear about the bad things, but there are wonderful things happening out there as well. So I just wanted to echo that.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next, we have Kevin Hassett, followed by Kathy Flattery. He's online, but he's not speaking. Kevin Hassett,
Okay, I think I'm there now.
there you go. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Kevin Hassett. Thank you for the opportunity to speak regarding Bill 902, Family Councils. My parents are at Anthology of Simsbury Assisted Living. My mom is 91. She has polio, always uses a scooter. My dad is 90. He has Parkinson's and uses a walker and a scooter. Anthology is a very nice looking facility and offers numerous social activities, but they fail terribly at providing proper care. Most care requests and concerns are ignored. The residents and family very much need family councils to help get Anthology to be responsive to issues and concerns. Some recent examples of Anthology not providing proper care are approximately 3 months to address a mold health issue, many follow-ups required. Apartment cleaning is to be weekly. That is missed at least once a month. Also, numerous cleanings are incomplete. Examples, toilets not cleaned. Took approximately 3 months to get a bedroom window shade operation. Again, many follow-ups required. My parents get 4 daily additional care services, which they pay for. 1 or more services are frequently missed each day. I was instructed to install a camera in the apartment to see what's being done and not done, and contact Anthology when items aren't done. My dad recently started getting assistance getting dressed each day and showers 3 times a week. That has been missed more than it has happened. There are monthly town hall meetings with the residents. A resident does the meeting minutes, since Anthology was doing them poorly. Each month, the majority of the meeting minutes items are reminders that item are months old. Anthology provides a van and service 4 days a week for residents. The van was recently inoperable for over 3 months, no reason given or updates, and no attempts to lease a replacement or borrow a van from the other nearby Anthology facility. Emails and calls to Anthology local and corporate management are often not returned. When I have been able to talk with management, I get a polite response, but then it requires multiple follow-ups and reminders to get actions. So as you can see with the examples just mentioned, Anthology lacks accountability or processes to manage the items they are to perform. I know of 2 cases of residents being told, if you don't like the support, you can move out. With the establishment of a family council, there would be an improved likelihood that Anthology would be more responsive and more accountable to provide the care that the residents require and deserve.
Sir, first, I'd like to ask you to summarize your thoughts, but I'm also being asked for the purpose of recording your testimony, if you could turn your camera on, please.
Sorry, didn't realize it wasn't on. And as it was wrapping up now, we'll say thank you for your time. I hope you pass this important bill. Our elderly and their families certainly need it and deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Comments or questions? Seeing none, we thank you again for your testimony. And we will be going to Kathy Flaherty.
Good afternoon, Senator Hockadell, Rep. Garibay, Ranking Member Seminara and Belinsky. I'm here to testify on 2 bills. I'm sorry that I have not had the chance to write my testimony, so I hope you will take this offering in the spirit in which it's offered. So the 2 bills that I'm here to testify on are 5779, the act concerning the study of the criminal penalties. I very much appreciate that a space has been provided for someone from Connecticut Legal Rights to sit on that group, and we would be happy to join the task force. And I know that's probably something that those of you who've known me for a long time are surprised by, because I am one of those people who thinks that task forces are usually just a way of kicking a can down the road. But it's my understanding that we really do want to carefully examine what those criminal penalties should be to make sure we accomplish the goals of making sure that this kind of abuse doesn't happen to people who are elderly, people who are disabled, or people who are conserved. And that is something we actually see happen too often, in my opinion, for some of the people who reach out to us for assistance, and there's no good way of addressing it. So let's figure that out. I join the people who are opposed to creating a registry. So I am here in opposition to Senate Bill 901. My suggestion would really be is that if you are creating a task force to look at the criminal penalties, that before you create a registry, you perhaps should have looking at whether a registry will accomplish what you want to accomplish, and give that to the task force as one of its items that it should investigate. I have 2 other suggestions with relation to that task force, and it's really backing up what Mairead said earlier. I noticed that there's spots for a whole bunch of professionals. I didn't see any spots on the task force for family members or people who are elderly, disabled, or conserved. We want to make sure we get that input from them. So requiring that they have the opportunity to speak to us and share their experiences would be really important.
Could you summarize your thoughts, please?
That's it.
That was easy. Thank you so much. Are there comments or questions? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through your experience, Kathy, what do we learn from people directly serving on the task forces to represent their own lived experiences?
What I would say is that if you're going to put people with direct lived experience on the task force, you need to have more than one. You can't have one person representing entire communities that may have very different lived experiences. So it could be, I think it brings something to the table. I think it brings accountability to the table, because those people will be more interested than anybody else there in making sure that the system ultimately changes in some way. So I believe it adds a level of accountability. If for whatever reason people decide to not have them serve directly as members of the task force, I think it would be incumbent on the task force to make sure they do outreach to the various stakeholder communities.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's where the best solutions come from, is the people with the lived experience. So I just want to note that for the record. Thank you, Kathy.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Representative Hughes. Are there any other comments or questions? Seeing none, we thank you, everyone who has testified. We're at the end of our list. I also want to thank the best committee members ever for your thoughtful comments and questions and discussion, and looking forward to talking about this further. Our next meeting is Tuesday at 12:30. We stand adjourned. Thank you.